All right. So the recording just went on. I think, Matt, as kind of the person who gets all the credit or blame for this, is this the fifth of these roundtables?
Think it is. Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
eventually we'll all learn something. So
Teachable moment.
yeah, so I think today we wanted to talk about like technology issues. We talked about, pricing issues and some of the other stuff. Anybody have anything that they want to like make sure we talk about? Because we can just start there.
I I would love to talk. Obviously, AI is going to come into this. What I would love to talk about is what are we going to do about software that allows candidates to apply for many, many jobs very, very easily. It's already creating a huge problem. Recruiters are inundated with applications that often all look exactly the same. And these are the same candidates who expect to hear back from recruiters and not be ghosted. So are we entering an era where everyone is going to be ghosted because AI is inundating us all with too much stuff?
It's a bigger problem for ATSs, I think, than job boards. If the majority of our jobs are redirects back to the ATS, you know.
Matt, are
Yeah.
you thinking about the like the one, well, it's not what's it called? I know there's one particular product that's caught, and I'm blanking on the name of it, but basically the job seeker pays a fairly small fee, and then it
Lazy
uses
apply.
AI to, yes, that's right, Chris, easy apply. Like it'll apply, theoretically to thousands of jobs. Is that the scenario you're thinking about, or is it more like the one-click apply, like, Indeed, Zip, JobSync, et cetera, offer?
From what I hear, it's both. And so I've
Okay.
got two case studies that I've heard about just in the last 2 weeks. One was actually posted on LinkedIn, and it was the CEO of an organization here in the UK called Toast. They
Oh yeah.
sell, yeah, okay. So she said that her TA team had had 1,000 applications for a job role that a year ago would have attracted about 10. And she said the applications looked by and large the same because what candidates are doing is saying, here's my CV, ChatGPT or whoever, AI, and here's the job, make my CV match the
Mhm.
job, and then they send it. So that was one case study. And the other was a guy that I know works in Sweden and he helps organizations with their TA processes and a job role for a software engineer I mean, I think he said something like 11,000 applications.
Wow.
It's got to the point where it's ridiculous. And this is happening at the same time that I am bemoaning the fact that the job seekers experience is now woeful because they are mostly not replied to. If you're a job seeker right now, you can expect not to hear back. That should
Yeah.
be your default expectation. You will not hear back.
Yeah.
So it's a problem on both sides, and no wonder the whole industry doesn't have a great reputation. So AI can be brilliant, but how do we fix this particular issue? I don't know.
Um, who do we
I think
think this is the who do we think has the biggest problem here? Like there are certain categories of jobs where, even today in tech, there's a bunch of jobs that are just not getting many applicants. They're not getting a lot of interest. And then, there's some hourly wage jobs similarly.
Mm.
And then you hear the counterexamples where there's some categories of jobs that are getting tens of thousands of applicants within the first 24 hours. Is there a way of categorizing where the biggest challenges are going to be?
Well, remote jobs get the most
Yeah.
applications of anything right now. So they're probably number one in my book.
what was
I
that, John? What did you say, Chris?
Remote jobs,
Oh, remote. Okay.
they get
mm,
like 3x the number of typical applications that the average job does.
Uh,
mm,
yeah, it's an interesting one. Obviously, I mean, I'm coming at this from a games industry specialism point of view. So, um, I'd be it's something that I'd be interested to see when I speak to people after this conversation, whether or not we know that there are many clients that have told us anecdotally that they're getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications for roles, but that's the games industry at the moment is going through some mass redundancies and mass layoffs. So we're kind of expecting the numbers to be higher, but it'll be interesting to dig a bit further and say, well, are they all a bit uniform? Are they all a bit kind of AI generated? Because if they are, then it clearly will be a problem. But it's not something I've heard in this sector particularly, but perhaps it's
I'm
because it's so niche.
I'm the same, Ian. I work in healthcare, as you know, and being inundated with applications is definitely not a problem that we're facing.
Yeah.
You should have such problems.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think the thing is, if the software and the technology is there as a job seeker, then they're going to take it, aren't they? If it's free or if it's particularly
Yeah.
cheap.
Can't blame them.
I
I
can't
mean,
imagine anybody
Stepstone,
that's
I was
out
going
of
to say
work for any.
Stepstone in Europe as offers it as a free service.
Do they?
So if yeah, they rolled this out about 3 or 4 months ago. As a candidate, they have an inbuilt system that will write your cover letter, help
Right.
provide advice to improve your CV to match the job. So it's like
Well,
the platforms are helping.
Well,
the
we
job
know
seeker
that
that way.
Indeed do the same thing. And, anecdotally, I hear clients getting really pissed off
Yeah.
that from Indeed, all they get is a massive volume of applications. Indeed have made it really easy for people to click and apply to multiple jobs. So
It's quite strange, isn't it? Because again, when we go out and we do a lot of work in universities and give out careers advice to young people who you kind of half expect don't really know the advice that you're giving them and don't know how to help themselves get jobs. And the advice we give is always tailor your CV to every individual vacancy. Not rewrite your entire CV, but at least kind of have a
mm,
revisit and tweak it.
mm,
If it's a particular games company, then talk about whether there's stuff in your portfolio that's relevant to them and that technology, that kind of thing. So it flies in the face of everything, really, doesn't it? That you're going out and that would be my piece of advice to any job seeker is always tailor it. But it sounds like this is just spam. It's just spam CVs, isn't it?
yeah, it's just taken it to another level. I mean, Chat GPT, I've done it. It's
Yeah.
really good at helping you write a CV. It's
Yeah.
excellent. It's like you say, it's just how far do you take that?
Yeah.
There's
So I was in
there's
I was in a conversation on LinkedIn probably a week ago, and it might have been that Toast example where they got 1,000 applications, and I don't remember, but Matt, I think it was you who just said like a couple minutes ago, like a year ago would have been 10. The fact that I don't remember what it was a year ago is irrelevant. But I think you're right. It would have certainly it was certainly an order of magnitude larger, right? Whether it was 10 or whether it was 30 doesn't really matter. It was nowhere close to 1,000.
Mm,
But as the conversation went on, a couple things became, I think, kind of obvious to me. One was that this was not a situation where they were blaming like an easy apply, where the candidate uses AI to apply at once to 1,000 jobs. What this was is that this particular employer posted a job and basically walked away from it for weeks,
Yeah.
and then came back and saw that they had, I'm just going to make up a number, 10 times as many applications as they had wanted. They started to look through them and didn't look at most of them. They wrote that they did not look at most of the applications. And the biggest problem they had was that they felt like most of the applications sounded a lot alike.
mm,
Okay. Is that an AI problem or a
mm.
technology problem? I think
It's
that's dysfunctional talent acquisition. It's
Yeah.
I,
if you
mm,
post a job, every decent ATS, and I would say a lot of job boards, maybe not most, but certainly the Indeeds of the world, you can cap the number of
mhm,
clicks or applications you get. So if that employer knew from experience for a role like that, at most, they want 50 applications at the absolute most. Then why
Yeah.
didn't they turn it off at 50 applications? I mean,
Yeah, and
it's kind of like,
Mm.
I got drunk and I crashed my car, so I'm going to blame my neighbor because they didn't have fresh flowers on their
yeah,
dining room
yeah.
table. It's like, well, that's true, but it doesn't have anything to do with this.
I'm
I
going to
think
remember that one, Stephen. That's a good one. I'll write that one down, that excuse.
Yes, right now, my wife, who's our CEO, is I think she's listening and she's thinking it's weird because I haven't had fresh flowers on our dining room table for a while, but
I think the
So,
future ATS is going to have throttling capabilities in there with these applications. It's going to have a set of rules saying, okay, after 100 resumes, pause the ad for a while until the recruiters have time to actually look at those resumes. That's
I
where we're
think
headed,
for
I think.
every employer who understands how to do that stuff and is large enough to have a team that manages that sort of thing and so forth and so on, there got to be plenty of employers who you turn on an ad and then I don't set up rules. I don't this, I don't that.
Yeah,
I just
the employers don't
I
care that
post
much
an
at the end
ad.
of the day.
I mean, we should not assume that the average employer, especially small ones, it especially small ones, is understands how these things work.
Yeah.
Part of it, I mean, it's like anything else, right? It's education. I mean, if you look at, I go through the different sites, the different news cycles, looking for articles on employment or whatever. And so many of them, you have to apply to 200 jobs to just get a call back. You have to apply to, 350. And so people are, the job seekers are freaking out. So to them, seeing something like that where they can click and apply to 500 jobs, they're like, okay, maybe I'll get 2 callbacks and an interview out of that. So there's also the other side of it. And how do you combat something like that when you have major news outlets, writing articles saying this is what's going on in the job search world.
Yeah, and I think to that point, so we build just for transparency, we build these agentic technologies. So we power a handful of these auto apply tools. We're building our own as well for our job boards, and this stuff will be everywhere in 5 years. I can't imagine that people will go through a step-by-step process to apply to jobs in 5 years. The technology is capable now of doing it, and once people realize the impact on conversion rates, on application rates, which is profound, I think this will be on every job board, and this will just be the way that people apply to jobs. So I almost wonder if there's like beyond technology, I almost wonder if there's a new type of like credential or sort of verification process where there's you see this happening with ChatGPT. When you generate an image with ChatGPT and then if you post it to LinkedIn, there's a little indicator that says this was generated by AI, and that's a public indicator. And I almost wonder if there's a new type of opportunity or verification system that we can build into the application process. Maybe not in the short term, but over the course of the next 5 to 10 years.
So Patrick, the tools that you're building at JobFront, right? The tools that you're building, is it more like the Indeed or Stepstone or JobSync, like a one-click apply where you're assisted by AI? Hey, you want some help writing a better CV so it better matches up with the job description, so I make sure that the words that you, the candidate, use that mean the same as what the employer uses, I'm going to suggest that we change it to the word that the employer uses. Rather than hospitality, I'm going to recommend hotel. Things of that nature. Is that what you're doing, or are you doing here's my CV or resume, go out and apply to thousands of jobs for me? I really feel like those are really different issues. I kind of feel like that first issue, I'm going to help you apply to the job. I think we should be embracing that.
Yeah, agreed.
That's where we focus.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where we focus, but the same technology could do both. And so what we focused on is taking the application process into your native job board, so you don't have to redirect out to a third-party job board. And so it has a great impact on the customer experience, on the candidate experience, but it also has a great impact on conversion rates. So that's where we've focused. But with a 10-degree change in the technology, you can do the second thing. And we've decided not to do that for now.
I think
I'd say
the other question surely though is that from the TAs and from the hiring people, then as long as they can deal with the volumes, then surely they don't care, do they? If they get good applications, surely it's about the qualities. Now I know they're not
so
going to
I,
10.
I, I disagree with that, Ian. I think this is the bit which is kind of missing with the whole thing in terms of even the low volume AI improvers. The way that TA judges quality is to look
Yeah,
at a CV and kind of go, does this match
yeah,
what I'm hiring for? If they're suddenly seeing what did it used to be that an employer was happy if they got 12 applications through for a job, then you probably think that get them ringing up and complaining about low volume. If they get 12 CVs through and they all look good, but they suspect, even if it's not the case, and I don't think there is actually like large volume issues here. I think that there's a fear of it. But if TAs immediately suspect they're all AI improved, actually people might not be quite as good as they're on paper, then the value of an application from a job board gets wrecked.
mm,
Basically, employers won't go to job boards anymore and trust they're getting value when they're getting applies coming through. They'll think
I
they're
was
getting
on,
something which is
sorry,
automatically
Ben.
matched.
I was on a panel discussion 2 weeks ago with Team Taylor as an ATS, and the audience were heads of TA, sort of senior recruiters from cross agency world as well. And one of the biggest conversation sort of chunks, if you like, was the quality of applications and the hoops, the filters, the sort of techniques and tactics they're now having to employ to filter out AI applications versus human, because the AI ones are getting through, they are getting through to interview. And there are even some examples were given that the person had actually got the job based on not just an AI application, but then a AI interview techniques and tactics and video. And then first day in the job, they don't actually have any of the skills or any of the capabilities to deliver.
wow.
So, the cost involved in bringing someone all the way through, that is going to be one of the biggest, I think, costs in addition to where we're at right now for attraction.
Maybe we'll all have to just go back in time 20 years and like interview people
That was what,
properly,
yeah,
meet people face to face and take references and all that
have
boring shit.
coffees in real life, take a notepad and pen.
Yeah.
EY, I don't know if they're still doing it in December of 2024, but I think I saw as recently as July, and so I think they probably are. That's exactly what they're doing, Ian.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you want to go and work, like these are elite candidates going to work in elite positions for one of the world's most elite organizations, and their solution to this was we're going to have, I think it's something like 12 different places in the world. And if you want to work for us, you have to
Yeah.
travel at your own expense in person,
Yeah.
disabilities be damned, socioeconomic issues be damned, and you've
Yeah.
got to come and work here. And I get the motivation there. And if that's a very, very short-term solution, okay, I think I can, me personally, it's like, okay, I'll give you get a jail-free card. But the next time you come around the board, I'm not going to give you your $200. I am going to send you directly to jail. If this is a long-term solution to say
Mm.
to a candidate in a really remote area or somebody with disabilities, or maybe they have kids at home
Yeah.
and they can't travel, I I I think
Well,
it's it's really harmful to the candidates, to the employer long term, to society. But Clara, question for you, because I know you've done a lot of work with employers. Um, I wonder, I'd like to challenge the thinking that an AI assisted application means that you are putting lipstick on a pig. Um, I wonder, and what I mean by that is just because somebody's using AI to improve the quality of their CV, the words they use, making sure it matches, does that mean that they were a poorly qualified candidate, or does that mean that they did not have the skills to write a good CV? And do we hire people, if you're looking for a mechanical engineer, who cares if they're really skilled at writing a CV? And it feels to me like forever employers have used CVs as a way of excluding candidates from the hiring process because they're getting too many good ones. And now we're helping to elevate the ones that haven't been good at writing CVs, and that makes it more inclusive. It provides
So
it should be helping
is
the
your
employers.
question, Stephen, whether AI is dressing something up, which that's not a bad thing, or is it involved in deceit, where it's claiming that you are skilled in things that you're not skilled
Perfect.
in?
Yes, perfect, Matt. So thank you for taking my 400 words and boiling it down to three.
You know I'm a marketeer, Stephen, so I could read through that in a heartbeat. It's absolutely fine.
That was like an Englishman versus an American in one sketch.
It was it also might
I
have
didn't
something to
mean
do
it
with
like
the
that.
fact
Sorry.
that I like to say that I'm a fully
Only,
recovered lawyer and therefore I get paid by the word.
if only
Where
I could
Matt's
get
like,
one of you to edit Stephen when we're on our podcast. The podcast would be half as long and twice as bright.
well, okay. So, Peter, in all fairness, the Inside Job Boards and Recruitment Marketplaces podcast has won many, many awards for having the most excessively long title of any podcast that's ever existed. So we
I'm
are an
going to forget the
award-winning
question
podcast in
soon.
that sense.
I'm a woman of a certain age. I am going to forget the question soon, but I
It,
think there's
what
two.
I think Matt I hit the nail on the head. It's like are we helping candidates to present their best image truthfully, right? More of a marketing kind of thing, or is it deceit?
I think
And,
there is very much a yes for both.
okay.
And again, it's the intelligence and the full strategy around the talent attraction piece that for me, an employer needs to take ownership of and also be really mindful of. Like that we're in the world where everybody can access this technology. It's a game changer for everybody. The lowest common denominator is yes, it's definitely going to enhance people who have not been able to curate their story or get across in the keywords that match the application. They're going to use the technology intelligently to put themselves in a better position. And especially those job seekers. I mean, I'm not being funny. I don't know if any of you guys have actually applied for a job in the last, couple of years. It's bloody horrible and awful to apply for a role. Why would you do it for fun? And
Mm.
if we're thinking about it in a kind of real critical way, someone who's applying for a job is going to be doing it through 9 times out of 10, their best possible way to do that. And therefore, their application should be taken as seriously, I feel, as anybody else's. I think what's really the question here and what came up last week in the conversation was how can we be assured that actually we're giving everybody the same amount of treatment or the same process? And that's fair. If that's fair, if someone puts all of their details in via chat and kind of comes out with an AI encrypted application that's, very much robot speak and it ticks all the boxes, gets past the ATS and is all great. But actually the reality of that person isn't anywhere like the story that they painted or is factually incorrect.
Mm.
And that can only be picked up once it's been validated. But by then you're already down the journey so far that you've already invested in that person. So
Claire, can I
what's
ask
the
you a question?
danger is, sorry, Ian, let me just finish the section
Oh,
because I
sorry,
will
yeah,
obviously forget what I'm talking about. The danger is that there is going to be employers out there who blanketly search for, and I ask the question, has anybody been using
Mm.
AI readers to basically pull out and extract AI applications? But that I think is going to be the first filter that employers start to put on, which will, like you said, Stephen, really disadvantage those who are using technology to get a more inclusive opportunity. So that's where I'm at, I think, at the moment.
No, that answers my question then, Claire, because I was just going to say you speak to loads more TAs, I think, in en masse, if you like, than probably we do. We speak to our own individual clients, but I was going to say to you, you've popped in the notes there that they do care massively, but I did wonder whether they were reaching that point where they were kind of saying, right, well, do you know what? We can't decipher between whether it's lies, whether it's this, whether it's that, whether it's fair. So what we'll do is we'll just knock on the head anybody who applies using AI, and then we're back to whatever, it's the same as it was 10 years ago or whatever. Are they reaching that point, do you think, some of them, where they are just going to put that filter on?
There's definitely that kind of wariness, and I think for the large scale employers, those that are dealing with mass applications and it's constant, especially around this time of year when you've got the seasonal hiring pieces and volume hiring going on. But then, to be honest, to whoever said it before, who cares if someone's gone, actually, I want to just apply for this job, it's, minimum wage and I'm just serving drinks or I'm just holding out hot dogs or whatnot. It doesn't, like, that level of skill and application should be fast and it should be furious and it should be simple to get people in roles. I think the complexity comes when you're dealing with levels of seniority, higher aspects of technicality, where you need qualifications and you also need validation of those qualifications that are set. That onus will always sit and should do with the employer to validate all of those. But from a job seeker perspective, I think what's also happened, and you guys might, again, there's some work that I'm doing with another client of mine where we're looking more into the soft skills and validating capability and also enabling a candidate or an applicant to come forward with, actually, I've read your job spec, I can do all of it, but that's subjective. My CV won't give you the how I can do all of it, but it will tell you the things that I've done. Probably won't have the same keywords, but capability is something that you can't articulate just in facts and dates and experience piece. So I think there's got to be a gap there, and we're exploring it actually with Lumini at the moment to try and find a way in which we can equip every individual with that way of saying, your job is telling me that you need a 5 out of 5 for leadership or a 3 out of 3, a 3 out of 5 for communication and a 2 in collaboration. Well, I map all of that. That's exactly what my capability blueprint looks like. And so that's the sort of, I think, the bit in the middle that will enable us to read between those technically enhanced applications versus, I mean, what's the difference these days? Is everything technically enhanced? The job spec is going to be technically written by AI most of the time anyway. So,
Definitely.
what are we actually benchmarking for, or what are we helping employers to really find? And I think making applications and that talent attraction strategy as more inclusive as possible and as open as possible for all of the right talent to apply, then you guys are doing the right jobs, just being open to it and figuring it out.
You know what? I think, if I may, there's anytime that there's any new technology or there's always a huge gap, right? There's the individuals, like in this case, the young people who brought up on the technology. So AI to them is just an extension of, phones and whatever. And then you have people who are older, right, who had no idea about this, right? So they're trying to figure out what's going on. So then there's the question of fear, right? You have which one is afraid? Well, the ones that are afraid are the older ones who don't know how to use it. So they start just dumping and dumping and dumping and applying and applying. So it'll catch up to itself, is what I'm saying. Like there's always that. I think we're still in that infantile stage, and it has to catch up because there's two sectors of the population, one who knows how and one who doesn't really know how and is trying to figure it out still. If that
It's
makes
strange,
sense.
isn't it? Because you could see a solution, but it'd have to be quite manual, where companies would have to advertise and say, like they do, they'll put on adverts now, we don't want the help of recruitment agencies, we don't want this. They could put on there, couldn't they? We do not encourage AI applications, but it's not going to solve the problem, is it? Because, well, unless the AI doesn't apply to those jobs, then it's just going to ping your CV
I,
off to those vacancies anyway, isn't it?
I
I
think
think
there's
there's
a fairly simple solution on the candidate side that I like. I'm surprised job boards haven't done this yet. That would be to allow the candidate to flag up applications where they're really desperately wanting that particular role. Kind of give them a gold, silver medal, gold, silver, bronze to spend every day, and say, look, I'm desperate for a job, so I'm applying for 100 jobs or 1,000 jobs a day using AI or whatever. I'm pimping up my CV to the best of my ability. But this job here, this one here, is the one I've like stayed up all night and researched the company and done all that bit because I know I'd be a great fit. There's absolutely no way for a candidate to be able to indicate that
But
in
also
the
the
job
ATS
process.
and the ATS will just
Yeah,
pick them up anyway.
yeah, exactly. So there's like, but if there was some sort of self-ranking that like candidates could do going into the system, at least, hey, that kind of takes the robot out of the approach. But
There's
Well,
also
obviously,
there's a handful of other outside of AI. One of the things that I always thought would be so fun is if if you, as an applicant, as a candidate, if you had somebody who was advocating for you, like applying to a job is a separate skill from actually doing the job in many
Yeah.
cases. And so
Yeah.
if you had somebody who was advocating for you, and it's almost like a coach or like a marketer for your own skills that takes you through the process, I always thought that'd be so cool to like equalize the playing field of the application process. But there's other things that are going on as well. There's a handful of companies who are building video solutions where they require a quick 30-second video describing who you are and what your skills are. That's going to be possible to fake with AI soon too, but right now it's like another roadblock. And so there's other dimensions I think that can help to add gates during the application process. One thing that I'm really interested in, Claire, from you is if you go the next step in the process, which is the actual interview, there's a bunch of AI tools now for talent acquisition teams to actually interview candidates too. So on the other side of the equation, are you seeing any of this pop up yet?
Yeah, there was quite a few conversations again around this a couple of weeks ago. I was just also as well mulling, Patrick, you mentioned being able to sort of tag journey. For me, that's lead scoring in the CRM, right? So when you're trying to business develop and you kind of have a contact or a prospect and you start to add points to them, like, wouldn't it be amazing if job boards gave candidates points and provide that data to the employers because the candidates visited their career page and it's visited and downloaded their latest, I don't know, directory or publications, or it spent time on their Glassdoor reviews, and all of that was mapped. And then the candidate score, as much as anything, is an indicator of that. I really want this job and I'm doing all my homework. Like that for me is a really great potential to add
That's
to that
such a cool idea.
experience.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
It sounds like you're talking about like a HubSpot or Pardot, right? So like we use Salesforce and we have Pardot integrated with that. So if an employer comes to our site and fills in a demo request form, right, we add a certain number of points to their score.
Yeah,
If they just click to our pricing page, or there are any number of things that they can do,
yeah,
then we add to the score. At some point they get past a threshold, and that basically triggers a notification to the sales P team. Hey, Claire is way, way too interested. So we need to call her. um, and it kind of sounds, a question that I've got for a lot of this stuff though is this, and maybe I'm being, the ostrich with my head in the sand, but is this a job board issue? Or is
if
this,
it's
or
a really nice, I think it's a really nice potential solution that you can offer, especially from the niche boards perspective, where you've got employer brand aspects for employers to really showcase themselves. And I think that's the other thing, I think, to Patrick, to your point around the video stuff and using video AI and all of those other AI tools to interview and to really bring people through. The chatbots are doing brilliantly right now. So anybody that's got chatbots as part of their application process, and at each part of the journey, if you like, the application journey, those that are thinking about that and reducing the amount of drop off, because there is still quite a lot of drop off, especially around the younger generation and early careers. I think there's also the capability of organizations to have their career site, and I know this is slightly outside of your guys' remits, but the career site itself should be able to track traffic to and from itself,
yeah,
but then also to the Glassdoor reviews and to any of the FIFO scores or any of the other NPS scoring type capabilities that the business has got, that indication can and should be, I think, part of a sort of internet profile, if you like, of
Yeah.
a candidate who has then applied.
Yes.
I
Could
can
be.
see all of the journey and all of the activity that
Yeah.
all of my prospects have done before they download a white paper. And then I
Sounds
can gather that.
sounds like clever tech, which I'm sure there are people on this call that are building stuff that they could build that kind of clever tech. I suppose the only thing is that it can help point to the fact that someone might be a better candidate, but clearly they might still be not the strongest candidate, I suppose. They might be the most interested candidate, but they're not, maybe not
I
the best one for the
I
job. But at
agree.
least
Yeah,
it's part
they,
of the indicators, isn't it?
I
But
think
it's for every 100 people that apply, there's only going to be one person that gets a job, right? So
I think where that has real value, I think, would be in lower or semi-skilled job roles. So for us with nursing roles where you're highly skilled, I think I'd agree with Ian that it would indicate the most curious candidates, but not necessarily the best ones. And
It'd be great
but
for
I
graduate
do
recruitment.
think for higher volume, low skilled jobs, it would be a really good thing to add to the matrix to
Yeah.
create an impression of a candidate that takes into account everything they've got to offer, which includes their keenness, their curiosity. Um, I like the idea, but it would depend on what job board it sits on.
Yeah. Graduate recruitment, I can see it working well at graduate recruitment level, for example,
yeah.
because that's something where you want passion, don't you, and enthusiasm from grad. There's little to choose between a lot of graduates for many companies, I suspect, and that's the sort of thing you're looking for, and it's someone who really goes the extra mile to show you.
You need to trademark that idea, Claire, and not broadcast it.
Well, I don't know how many people were on the call earlier on, but there's 15 of you.
Hey,
Yeah,
Claire, I've got another question I was going to ask you. Sorry, I know you've sort of been bombarded here, but have you seen an increase?
Claire feels a little bit like a fish in a barrel right now.
Yeah, sorry.
And she's
Well,
like,
you've got this insight
so in addition to there being like a massive gender imbalance, there are all these like job board people pestering the TA consultant, and she's like, boy, I don't know, Claire, if you drink or not, but I think you're going to need one by the end of this call.
yeah, it's the night before a birthday, so yeah,
all
they'll be
right,
drinking.
then one more, Claire, then sorry. So
No,
No, go on.
she's so easily capable of handling anything that we throw at her. So let's.
a large care home employer last week I was talking about applications and applicant tracking systems, and because we're going to build a one-click apply on our site. And they said, well, actually, we quite like forcing candidates to go through each of our application forms. She said, because it sorts out the wheat from the chaff, who's really interested and who isn't.
Yeah.
And also, she said, if we just make it too easy, we just get bombarded and we can ask very specific questions. So it's given me a whole load of reasons why they quite like, the application form, which feels like Ian said, let's go back 20 years and just, have you seen an increase in the number of employers who are talking about doing the same thing, increasing for application forms, they are tailor-made to different job roles, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot more smarts around the right volume of applicants for the role. And actually, I think, God, going back to my Broadbean days, and we were talking about, is it Net-a-Porter? Yeah, Net-a-Porter, they had, I think, a 7-stage application process for someone to be in their warehouse and fold and box the clothes in tissue paper and put like tiny labels on it and all sorts of stuff.
Okay.
And their application process was ridiculous because actually all they were wanting is people to come and stuff boxes with clothes. And when asked about it, it was for exactly that reason. They wanted to make sure that the quality that someone would handle the garments and package with care at every stage was as fastidious as they would be in terms of answering the question. So I think there is a real sort of like, yeah, absolutely. If we want the right type of applicants here, we need to make sure that the applicant process marries to that. But actually, being much more honest and transparent right at the beginning. So it does also put people off who are the sort of like generic. And then it's easy to see those that have just gone, you know what, I'm just applying to hundreds of jobs every day without even thinking about it. And I think with especially the humanity-based jobs, we have to be much more specific to the human and human interaction that we're going to have. We're in a real talent short market when we talk about care homes and social services and any kind of people-based roles, but we have to talk to the humans there. So the application process needs to be very human. And if you tell someone up front, you know, this is going to be quite an interesting but long, drawn out process. We appreciate that you might want the role really quickly, but we can get you through that process in 24 hours, 48 hours, if you take time to answer the questions that we're asking and or submit yourself to the process fully. So I think so long as we've got that up front, experience, expectation set, everything does flow from there.
Yeah, that was great
Matt,
answer. Hey,
Matt, the conversation that you had with this care home, my words, not yours, but they want to make the application process as unpleasant as possible for their convenience. Couple things. First of all, this is more of a joke, but it sounds to me like you're dealing with a sociopath. The second,
Out of it.
it was. I think that's quite a me. That's yeah. It's not quite like that.
but in all seriousness, I've heard that strategy hundreds and hundreds of times over the years. That we want to make the application process lengthy, difficult, unpleasant, because the only people who will get all the way through are the ones who most want the job and who are most qualified. I have never heard of an employer that's actually empirically tested that. I mean, it sort of makes sense, but it also makes sense that the people who most want the job and who are the most qualified would be the ones who are most likely to opt out and to go to a similar employer with a similar job that actually treats them well. And so I think there's at least as good an argument that by creating a process like that, that they are ensuring that they're going to hire the least qualified, the most desperate people.
It seems a bit worrying that they're going to those lengths in the application process. I think in the interview process, then, I mean, whether I'm talking about us hiring for people for my company or games companies that put things into the process that they feel add value in terms of deciphering who are the best candidates, then I think that's different. I mean, making the application process itself is difficult, is a bit worrying. I think you should always have things during the process that separate people that want the job, are prepared to go that extra mile to get the job, that without taking the mickey. I mean, you can't drag these things out through several stages, but presentations, that kind of thing, so you can see the skills. But yeah, making the application process difficult sounds like a really bad start to me. But
I think there's a lot more sort of, I suppose, conversation around that application strategy piece now than there was maybe 5 years ago. Obviously, candidate experience starts with that application, or even with the view
Even
they've got
even
to
before
articulate
that, yeah.
massively before that. You
Yeah.
know, articulating what the actual vacancy is, and I think there's a real sort of, I don't know, there's a real divide. Again, I kind of see it across different industries, but those to your point, Ian, the technology, the games, the kind of more digital enabled industries have already had and raised the bar, and yet they know they're going to get thousands of applications because that whole thing looks really sexy and it's really cool. I wouldn't even have a clue how to turn on my computer most of the days if it wasn't for my 15-year-old. So, you know, there's that capability. And then there's also that actual, do we want to make it easy for everybody to flood in? And then do we want to like squeeze the applications so far that we really do damage our reputation? Because that's the other upside of it, right? So actually, if you make the top of the funnel as narrow and as specific as possible, you are actually being quite inclusive because you're attracting just the right people who would want to apply versus having this giant opening, which you then reduce the experience for so many more because you've been too vague in that topic. So I think there's a real science there. And I think it's about really understanding not just what you're capable of doing in terms of an employer and your process, but also as well, what's the best thing for your brand? E-commerce, retail brands, they've kind of got the high street view on themselves anyway. Does it really matter if they treat people with quite a broadsword and cut them all out of the application process en masse? Probably not. They're still probably going to shop and buy there. But if it's a very niche brand and it's very specific in terms of what it does and who it does it for, then you need to start thinking about that experience being much more specific and specialist, in my opinion.
A lot of this too, I think we shouldn't lose sight as a job board industry that at the end of the day, a lot of our employer customers are evaluating us based upon our effective cost per application, right? Sometimes they're actually paying per application. That's a minority. But at the end of the day, um, almost every employer that we've ever worked with that I think has any kind of a decent process, when they're evaluating, do we work with that job board or that job board or that job board, inevitably they will stop working with the job boards where they don't get applications from them, right?
Yeah.
If we're going to pay, 200 pounds or euros or dollars or whatever, and you sent us two applications, we're not going to work with you again.
Mm.
They almost never, in my experience, will actually look at those two applications and say, we hired one of them. Instead, they're going to favor the job board that gives them 200 applications, even if they hired none of them.
Well, that might be
And so
different.
it's at the end of the day, I think TA for decades has been evaluating our effectiveness, not just our company, but I think most based upon volume.
Yeah.
But the higher the quantity, the higher the perceived value. And what I see in our industry is TA is now actually, they've always said quality was important. And I think most of them were lying about that. It sounded good. They heard consultants telling them that. They wanted their C-suite to believe that, but all of their process was based around quantity wins. There was really very little on the quality. Now, I think that my perception is that the consensus is actually quality truly is important. We really
Yeah.
do want to use quality, but if you ask them to define it, every single one of them will have a different definition, and that can vary day to day, hour to hour, recruiter to recruiter, even within a company. Very few employers actually have a standardized, objective, measurable way of saying that's quality, that's not. And in my mind, that's part of the real struggle here is like if we're going to help candidates portray themselves in an accurate, best light, kind of like what Patrick was talking about earlier, right? That increases quantity. And it also, I think, increases quality. But I don't think employers see it that way. I think a lot of employers just sort of assume, well, if it's AI assisted, you must be lying to me. And I just don't think that's true.
I think that's a really interesting point, and it just made me think about a question, Stephen, throwing back out. It might even be another episode because I definitely think with 7 minutes you're probably not going to have a chance to discuss this.
Oh no, I think we could resolve this all in like 12 seconds. So go.
In terms of your relationship with candidates, applicants,
Yeah.
how many of you track and manage, monitor, and really market to that audience from a perspective? Obviously, you take care of your clients, and that's absolutely fine because that's your bread and butter. But
Yeah.
in terms of outreach, communication, education, and support for those candidates,
Yeah.
how many of you actually really take care of that? Because that for me is almost another way in which the experience could be really in your hands and really curated by job boards, because that is you're the sort of outreach to the applicants of tomorrow, aren't you?
Yeah, I think it probably depends, Claire, on the type of job board you probably got. I don't know who's on the call, to be honest, but I can speak for Matt and I, for example, sat in our respective niches. Then, I mean, just for example, we've got a whole day today of support sessions for redundant and unemployed games developers, for example. So I suppose that probably answers the question, I think, in that how do we deal or how do we communicate? For us, it's key. I mean, we want a community. We want people to come to us. We want people to come back to us. So, but I think that's because we're in a niche, and Matt will be the same. Matt bends over backwards to try and provide a really good service to nurses and people in the health sector. So I think that's probably the differentiator is if you're a niche job board, then you should and you probably do value your candidates or your applicants as much as clients might be a stretch, but certainly got to put a lot of value in it, I think, and we certainly do.
Ian, do you think it's fair to say that every job board that you've ever heard of would say that they do value the candidate experience and that they do market to the candidates and they do provide advice? In my mind, I think we all think we do.
Yeah.
And I think virtually all of us actually do some.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a massive spectrum.
Probably.
Some being one blog article every 2 months, versus others where it's like people like Matt are like literally on calls with candidates. I think there's a huge disparity.
I don't know. I suppose it's you live in your own little bubbles, I suppose, don't you? And we obviously go to whatever it's the job board conference and that kind of things. But I don't get the impression from Indeed, for example, that I know my wife is using at the moment to find herself a job.
Okay.
I don't get the impression, having logged onto Indeed and seen Indeed, that they particularly bang a very loud drum of "we're all about the candidate," if you know what I mean. Whereas I think if I was a candidate,
their slogan is, what was it? We help people find jobs. Something like that. Their mantra, and they post a ton of content.
Maybe I just don't
every
see
day.
it.
My only point is, I think if you were to ask the folks at Indeed,
Yeah.
do you care about the candidate? Do you market to the candidate? Do you provide advice to the candidate? They would easily be able to answer yes, 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 yes.
Yeah, maybe they do. Maybe they do.
I'd also say this is a large portion of the TA side of the equation, moving the goalposts in terms of what's being asked for from the job boards without stumping up the readies to pay for it.
Yeah.
Because I think you're making a really good point about, for years and years, job boards have been measured on applications but paid on CPC or on tenancy basis. So, but if the applications weren't there, you'd get the earful from it, or you lose contracts and that side. Suddenly applications coming through. Claire, as you said, we're going to make the forms harder to complete. We're only going to accept candidates within 10 miles of the job location based on their IP. It's like, well, if you're going to do that, are you going to pay 2 times, 3 times, 10 times the price you were paying before for the application? Or do you expect that based on the old pricing that you were getting before? And that side of the equation, I don't hear any conversations about employers going, actually we're willing to pay like multiples more for the right candidate, unless you jump onto what Indeed are probably, I think, are kind of going 2 steps ahead and going with Indeed Hire and Indeed Plus and whatever acronyms they come up with, and going, oh, actually, we will sort through the candidates first for you and give you the perfect candidate at the end.
There's the half a recruitment agency such as service, I suppose. Yeah, no, I'd back that up. I mean, I own an agency and a job board, so I suppose I sit slap bang in the middle and see it from both sides. And what frustrates me is that we're measured as a job board. Certainly some measure us on quantity, but it's mainly quality, where we'll have clients say to us, no, we're not going to renew this year because, well, we've had a look and we've only made 2 hires through your platform this year. It's like, well, you've only paid us 3 or 4 grand and you've just told us that you've saved 20 grand in recruitment agency fees. So it's like, what do you want? So I don't know. We are measured with quite a high mark at times. I'm sure others are as well, to be fair.
Yeah. Should the quantity quality tension, should that be our topic for January?
Good one, yeah. Why not?
Okay. And then should we have Claire in a larger barrel or in a smaller barrel?
You definitely need her back. Definitely. We can't do this without her now. She's a fixture.
Yeah, I think it sounds to me like Claire's next stop is to get a nice adult beverage. I think we all owe her one.
Yeah, we need to get Claire and Louise Grant as well, because between them, I think they've got the answer to all our questions, Stephen. To be honest,
Well, I'm seeing
I
this
would
in a
go
lunch.
further than that. I would say that they also would tell us what questions we should be asking. And and actually, now that I say that, I meant it as a joke, but there is some truth to that, right? Like when if we're talking about, is technology driving too many applications? I think we have to like, what is the real question there? What's too many?
Yeah.
What technology is, again, I don't know if we really nailed down like what is the actual problem here? Like, is it that employers are just truly receiving too many applications? And is that a problem that the job board industry is accountable for? Or is that an ATS, the way that the employers are handling their problem? I can't go into a Fortune 500 client and tell them their process is broken. And if they fix their process, then they're going to see us as a good vendor. Like, that's going to land on deaf ears. It may be true, but it's we can only fix what's in our control.
Yeah.
And if
I
their
think
process is broken, we can't fix that.
what is worrying though is that if too many applications causes them to, if you like, almost stop advertising job vacancies, then yeah, it clearly creates problems for job boards, doesn't it? I suppose. So
Yeah,
there's got to be some balance stuck into it somewhere.
good point. Even if they are, even if the problem is on their end, even if we were to say, and it's maybe in some cases it's true that it's really dysfunctional, their problem becomes our problem.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, we need to deal with that too.
Mm.
And last but not least, the flip side is if it's their problem or not, but if the job board can solve it in some way,
Ah,
then you become a hero once again.
very true. Very true.
Yeah, I was
Well,
kind of spitballing a solution there, but I can save that for January if you want. I'll write it down
let's
so I don't forget.
yeah, I'll send out an invite. Everybody who is invited, I'll send an invite. This time it'll be the correct Zoom link. My apologies again for that. I'll post this to YouTube by tomorrow on the College Recruiter channel. So if you think that there are other people who can benefit, go ahead. As always, too, feel free to invite others. If there are other people in your organizations that you work with that you think are going to be helpful, and we'll see you guys when the calendar turns.
See you later, guys. Lovely to
Awesome.
speak. As always.
Have
Thanks,
a wonderful
everybody.
Christmas.
Thanks,
Take
Claire.
care.
Thanks, Claire.
All that
Bye.
good